"Lewis, you unharmed?" she said with a pained expression on her face, seeing his discomfort. "Sorry boss, he came out of nowhere. That thing on the stairs." He paused, gasping for breath. "It was an illusion, a fucking distraction." "I thank you," Randall said, giving a little bow of the head. "Some of my best work, and all improvised I might add." He studied them with something akin to disappointment. "Was this it?" Super cop with the gun, Larry McCulloch, who was cowering in the corner looking like he was about to shit himself, or already had. "Lewis here, and a priest? So where was that power coming from?" He had felt it when he came into the room. Something in here was making him sick to his stomach, not to mention raising the hairs on the back of his neck. He gave the priest the once-over, which made the holy man cringe under his scrutiny. There was something about the man that Randall couldn't quite pin down. Then it came to him. "You've been touched," he said in an almost accusatory tone. The priest took a step back, what little color left in his cheeks draining away, and his hand came up to his chest. Yes, that was it. The priest had met one of his kind before. He practically reeked of it now. Fear, plenty of that, but then again the room was swimming in it. But tinged with something else, that residue of familiar power. Very weak, but they're all the same. Randall was sure that wasn't what he had sensed outside, and what Israel had been so afraid of. No, this one had the smell of an old-school demon about him. Randall concentrated on the man's chest, where his hand had strayed, and could see the faintest trace of dark energy where the beast had made contact with his flesh. And the hint of something else, the scent of a collector. It had all but faded over time, but some still clung to the priest's skin, like the lingering scent of an old lover's perfume. "Interesting," Randall said absently. "Let him go," Peroni ordered, and made a point of re-aiming at Randall's head. "Don't think so," Randall replied. "Now, come on, put the gun away. You could hit your buddy here." He squeezed Lewis for effect, making him grunt. "Or worse still, me." "Shoot him, for Christ's sake," Larry shouted from his pathetic hiding place in the corner, where he had pressed himself against the wall as if trying magically to pass through it and away. "Larry, shut up," Peroni said through gritted teeth, not taking her eyes off Randall for a moment. "Smart girl," Randall praised. "Jesus," Larry shouted. "Do something." "Everyone calm down," Nichols said with surprising authority. Then to Randall in a softer tone. "Please, let him go." "Okay," Randall agreed and slowly loosened his grip on Lewis. "Now, lady. Anya, right? Put the gun away and I'll release him." Peroni narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "I just want to talk," Randall continued. "Besides, shooting me won't do you any good." "Sure, it'll hurt like hell, but it won't kill me." Peroni didn't move, and despite herself was giving serious consideration to shooting the American anyway. "Causing you pain would be start," she said to the collector, which raised a smile from the American. "Anya," Nichols coaxed, and moved to her side. "Please." After a moment she relented and reluctantly lowered her pistol. Randall nodded for her to holster the weapon, which she duly did, and took a step back. "There you go," Randall said, and released Lewis, who staggered over to Peroni, rubbing his bruised neck. "Hey," Randall called after him, and Lewis glanced back at the American with a look of impressive contempt in his eyes. Randall tossed him his pistol, which Lewis caught awkwardly. "Don't hurt yourself with it." Lewis turned the weapon over in his hands, obviously contemplating murder, but then gave a sigh of resignation and holstered it, his face like thunder. Peroni put her hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," he replied hoarsely, and rubbed his neck again. "Look, I'm sorry." "Don't be," she told him, and turned her attention back to Randall, who was smiling broadly. He folded his arms, clearly enjoying himself. So this was the famous Randall. A collector of souls. If she hadn't have seen that horrible thing on the stairs, she would have found it hard, looking at him now, to believe he wasn't anything more than just a smart-assed American. But then again, what had she been expecting? Horns and a forked tail? "All right," Nichols said after some time. "So, you are here. What do you have to say?" The collector took his sweet time. He looked at each of them in turn, still smiling that smile of quiet confidence. Despite the odds of 3-1, and Larry, but he surely didn't count if it came to a fight. He was in control here, he knew it, they all did. So why rush? Nichols found himself gawking at the man. He was not what he had expected at all. Nothing about him pointed to him being of the same species as the tramp McCready. McCready had been sick and tired of the game he had been paying for what Nichols had come to understand as over 100 years. He had crossed paths with an old man at the end of his life, eager for the end. Whereas Randall here looked like he was just setting out on his journey of terror, and by the looks of things was clearly enjoying every misery-filled minute of it. The priest had to fight the urge to bombard Randall with questions. Lame ones like, what was it like being a collector? What recollection did he have of his former life? Did he think of himself as truly evil? All lame, and all leading to one inevitable subject. Most of all he wanted to know about her, the dark goddess, Sophia. Did the collector know her? Was she still alive? Nichols so desperately wanted to know, but he found himself actually biting his tongue to keep the questions at bay. Not the time, not the place. After what seemed like minutes, it was the collector who finally broke the charged silence. Well. What a motley bunch you have hooked up with this time, Larry. Have we met? Larry asked. He was trying to keep his cool, which he was just about managing to do. Still, he glanced furtively past Randall and to the stairs beyond, and gave serious thought to making a very undignified run for it. He even thought about making a lunge for Lewis' gun while the man was still flustered from Randall's attack. No, he was past such heroics at his age. Instead his gaze came to rest on the box under the towel on the table. Christ, I must be desperate, he concluded grimly. Go on, Nichols, Larry said. Shut up, Larry, the priest snapped, his face reddening, eyes locked on the American. Show him, Larry insisted. I said shut up, Nichols repeated, this time with real venom. This won a bemused look from Randall. Show me what? Let's just say, it would be prudent for you to leave. Nichols warned, although there was no conviction in his voice. Prudent? Randall mocked. No, I don't think so. We all know this is going to end one way. Larry McCulloch in bloody pieces. The only variable as I see it is if you three god squaters join him or not. He met each of their eyes slowly and deliberately in turn as he spoke to make sure they all got the point. They did. The fear in the room now was almost overpowering, and might have been if not for that nagging feeling something in this place was amiss. He dismissed it as best he could and took in the room again. Yes, he may be an agent of the Lord of Lies, but what he had said was fact, and they all knew it. It was just a matter of how they would react. Look. Nichols' voice cracked and he silently cursed the growing fear in it. He cleared his throat and carried on as best he could. This will not go the way you had planned. You must let Larry be. You will have other chances, I'm sure. But not today. He was as surprised as anyone as his voice grew stronger with every word, but it did. It was now the collector who frowned. Which gave Nichols more confidence still. Strange, this one. Randall thought as he studied the priest. There was something about him. He had the feel of someone who had been in this type of situation before, to a greater or lesser extent. The man had hints of darkness about him from whatever brief encounter he had once had with his kind. But what possible fight could he hope to put up in the face of such power? In the end, words were weak and actions were power in Randall's world, and it was time to show his. He dug into his jacket pocket and took out a demon charm he had scrawled on the back of a playing card. In response, both Lewis and Peroni instantly drew their weapons and trained them on Randall, faces set in grim determination. Nichols held his breath and closed his eyes in anticipation of the blaze of gunfire to follow. Take it easy, Randall said, staring down the barrels of the two pistols aimed at his face. And got a massive sense of déjà vu. This is just a parlay, nobody needs to get hurt, just yet. Okay? And Nichols opened his eyes again when thankfully the demon's question was punctuated with silence and not the loud report of two hastily drawn pistols. It's okay, Anya, Lewis. They both glanced at him and he nodded reassuringly before gesturing for them to holster their weapons. This Peroni did instantly, but it took Lewis a few more seconds and a withering look from Peroni to do the same. Very smart, Randall said, still holding up the card. After all, he added. You may have the guns, but I hold all the cards. Until now, Nichols had deliberately been standing between Randall and the box to obscure it from his view, all the while hoping he wouldn't have to reveal it. However, that option, if it had ever actually been one, was long gone now. So he steeled himself for the unknown and stepped to the side of the table, revealing the box under the towel. Not all the cards, collector, he said, and whipped the towel away rather more theatrically than he had intended. The sight, finally, of the source of that nagging power nearly froze the blood in Randall's veins. He felt a surge of panic the like of which he had not felt since the night of his death, rise up from his bowels, and it took all his powers of self-control to stop himself gasping like a frightened schoolboy. A gaudy-looking box, so typical of the Vatican, sat on the table. Expensive and interesting perhaps to the casual observer, but to a collector it had the same impact of being in a room with a live, ticking nuclear bomb. Now there was no doubt where the source of that power he had first felt outside was radiating from. The one Israel had been so afraid of. As a box it was remarkable enough as an artifact. But as with all boxes, interesting or not, it was what was inside that counted. Miner's poem. Shit. That's an interesting looking box you've got there, Father, Randall said as nonchalantly as he could, however there was no way he could totally disguise the fear in his voice. He cursed himself seeing that the priest noticed it too, but carried on regardless. Is that? His throat was as dry as dust. Is that what I think it is? The power in the room had shifted in an instant and they both knew it. Yes it is, Nichols answered with newfound confidence. You know, amongst my kind, it's said that famous poem of miners is nothing more than a myth. Dreamt up by the Vatican to scare us. For a demon, you are a bad liar. Technically I'm not a demon, but I'll let that slide for now, Randall replied. He kept the priest's gaze as best he could, looking for any sign of a bluff. Did he really know what he had there? But Nichols held firm under Randall's scrutiny. If he didn't, Randall thought, then it was he who was the liar, and a damn good one at that. Peroni stepped to Nichols' side, taking strength from his courage. Lewis did the same, still rubbing his bruised neck. Well, Lewis croaked. That'll be the tables well and truly turned then. A good old-fashioned standoff. Finally, Nichols spoke. So, what now? The priest was bordering on the cocky now, Randall thought, and he didn't like it. Nothing's changed, he said. I want McCulloch. Randall looked menacingly at Larry, who was still cowering in the corner behind Nichols and the others. It seemed that despite himself, the old crook had chosen his protectors better than he had first thought. Lucky Larry indeed. Larry has a long overdue date with a very bitter end. I can't let you have him, Randall, Nichols stated. I know it, Randall said, returning his attention to the trio. I just thought I'd give you a chance to save yourselves. Just walk away. Because you are such a nice guy? Peroni sneered. No, Randall replied. Just lazy. So is it to be the easy way, or the hard way? The Italian could see the veneer of confidence fading from Randall by the second at this new turn of events. Clearly a man used to being in charge, he was hiding it well, but the whole air of him had changed. And for the first time in hours she felt a glimmer of hope. I think I speak for all of us, she said, pressing their advantage. When I say it has to be the hard way, demon. She took out her pistol and held it by her side, just in case he tried to make an ill-advised grab for the precious box. Here, Lewis agreed, and he too drew his pistol again and made a show of cocking back the hammer. The collector straightened at the threat and raised an eyebrow. Really? He said. Really, Lewis replied. Or, Nichols interjected before things escalated. You could just turn around and leave. Tell your people, or whatever they are, you couldn't find Larry. Nichols suddenly shuddered at an unseen presence in the room. It felt like a dozen demons dancing on his grave. It felt like he was back in St. James just before the creature appeared. He looked to the door, but it was empty, as was the landing beyond. Still, it made him uneasy.